Today, I am thrilled to welcome Santona Tuli to the show. Shantuna is a data science and product director with a background in physics and a budding interest in wood carving, and someone who has truly redefined what's possible in their career and life. Shantuna, welcome to Rise and Reinvent.
Thank you so much for having me, Nicole.
I'd first like you to describe yourself, not your job, but you as a person in just 60 seconds.
That's a challenge. I grew up in Bangladesh. I really enjoy exploring different cultures and traveling. I have a dog that is basically my entire life. I love to spend time outdoors with her, hiking. Um, and yeah, I have a background in physics. I love problem solving, technical challenges, anything that sort of requires putting together pieces and like solving something new is what I really, really like to nerd out about.
Excellent. Okay, so these won't be quite as quick, the next few questions, but thank you for that brief intro. What would you describe as your greatest personal achievement outside of your career to date?
I think that I have made my parents proud, which brings me a lot of joy. I think they're happy with sort of what I studied, where and I mean it is related to my career, but sort of like I know my dad really wanted me to get a PhD, so he's proud of that. I think that both my parents are proud of sort of my outlook on life and how I like to spend time with my friends and sort of like be there for people. And it's really weird weird to talk about yourself sort of in this way, but I do think that I I feel very loved and very privileged, very fortunate. And I think that my biggest achievement is that I have been able to make my parents sort of happy.
Let's dive into that for a moment. So, how does that, I understand how that brings you happiness, but have you also achieved the things that you feel make you happy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was never sort of like my parents didn't push me in one direction or another when it came to like what field I went into or what I did. Like, I always have lived my life the way I wanted to. I played soccer for 13 years, and like that was really a big part of my life. It brought me a lot of joy. I went into physics because I loved physics. I had a couple of high school teachers who were just wonderful storytellers, and like the ways that they explained physics and physics concepts was really um, uh, I always it's physics tends to be one of these things that kind of polarizes people, and some people, are like, oh, that's so hard, or something like that. I think it's really about how you frame the concepts and how you put it together. I think those teachers were really, really great at making things make sense. So, I got that, and that got me more and more excited to study physics. Similarly, sort of my brother, older brother, and my father were also sort of like physics minded and stuff. The ways in which my father described the world around us when I was little was also like, explaining things in terms of physics or chemistry and like the science behind it all. So it was all sort of inside me, I guess. And that drove me to, go to get a major in physics and then go to grad school for physics and all of that. And that, I mean, brought me immense joy getting to work with physics and getting to go to CERN and sort of work with, particle collision data. All of that was for me. I just, when I reflect back, achievement, I mean, especially if I'm not thinking about career achievement, like how do you define sort of success or achievement in life? And for me, like there are two things. So to like dig deeper on. Um, I feel very content with life, with sort of like what I would have built, like my partner that I chose, the life that we built together, the decisions that we've made for the most part. I mean, of course, there are, bad decisions in everyone's lives, but again, like my dog and all of that, I feel really fulfilled and content in all of that. With that said, of course, like there's definitely like, I have some mental health challenges and stuff, and I'm, very open about all of that. So not saying that it's all rosy, but like I am content and happy in life. And then something a bit more tangible, when you said like what you feel is your biggest achievement. Like I do think it's a little bit more tangible, like when I see how my parents sort of see me or talk to their friends about me and stuff. I do know that like um they feel like I guess, I like I said, like I think I make them proud, and that feels good to me.
That's great. That is wonderful because what you find is people spend so much time in their career, and often the focus is not as much on being passionate about it or having the gratitude. It's a lot about the money and making sure they can, cover the household and all those things. And so it's great that you have found your passion and you found something that not only you are proud of, but your family is also proud of you. So wonderful. Um, so you have a great story so far from what I've heard. But I know that usually with every great story, there comes some reinvention and resilience, hence this podcast, right? So, can you share a defining moment in your life that forced you to reinvent yourself?
This is actually hard. I've not thought about the specific moments um like that. So I
May-
yeah,
Maybe focus on a pivot that you had in your life, a move, a job change, an industry change. Uh, If
yeah.
you can walk us through that, I think it would be really interesting to hear about the reinvention that you did during that period.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's sort of been more organic than a moment of, I need to reinvent myself. But yeah, I'm more than happy to talk about sort of my journey. Um, yeah, so like I mentioned, I grew up in Bangladesh, and then I moved to San Antonio, Texas for college when I was 17. I spent, 4 years sort of uh, immersed in, American university life, college life. Definitely learned a lot, definitely grew a lot in that time. I was sharing this with a friend of mine recently. We were talking about responsibilities and sort of at what point, you become an adult, or start like owning some of your own responsibilities. And growing up, I definitely I was not the most self-motivated person, especially for like academics. I needed a little bit of a push to do my homework and things like that. Like, and I mean, partly it is that I didn't hit a wall until later in life, around like, oh, this is hard. I sort of, found school easy, and relatively speaking, and and all of that. Um and like I mentioned, I played soccer, I did all the things that I wanted to do. I was sort of like everywhere, and like, living, my life and claiming my independence and stuff. So it wasn't until college, when I was sort of, and like maybe after a semester or two, I was like, oh, I have control over the outcomes of, and over like the work that I do, and how that affects my GPA, for example, or like my life. And also, only I have control, which is to say no one else is going to sort of make me do something, or like it's me. I'm both the writer, and also the person that's gonna be affected by the benefits or the consequences. So that's sort of, I had that moment of let me let me understand what sort of my like not my limits per se, but like let me see what happens if I actually push myself. So I, like that the first semester my GPA wasn't great. I also didn't know what to, because like my whole high school, like we had a different grading structure, so it wasn't like a 5-point GPA or 4-point GPA or something. So I just
Mhm.
didn't know like where that number needs to be. And I was like, and then when I like had that moment and sort of turned around, I was like, oh yeah, I can push myself and I can get 4.0s. Like that's something that I can do and I can, sort of benefit from. Um, and then as I let me see. So yeah, college was great. Like I felt like I found a really good place in terms of support and culture and like um there was academic rigor, but also a great emphasis on I went to a small liberal arts school. So a lot of emphasis on common curriculum subjects, learning the humanities and all of that. And I actually went back home after college for a year. I wasn't ready immediately to go into grad school and like, keep chugging. I missed home. I wanted to be home for a bit. So I actually went home for a year, did a couple of internships, sort of got the lay of the land again after being away for a few years. Um, Reconnected with my family and my home. And then I applied to and got into grad school. I moved to California for grad school, went to UC Davis. For grad school, I found my research group, which was in nuclear physics. Um, I was drawn to that group because of the camaraderie, I guess,
Mhm.
camaraderie in the group. Honestly, because like I loved physics. I always have, and there's so many different options. Like this is something that, as far as making like decisions are generally hard for me because I never want to close a door. I, never want to collapse the wave function. I want to keep the options open as much as possible. And I found that like there were so many different things within physics, so many different fields that I could go into. So that couldn't be the metric by which I made my decision around what to work on. But I found something else that became a really good signal for me, which was like the group culture. So, I joined a group of about 10 people, working across two different experiments with two different PIs, professors leading it, but like very, very collaborative. And I loved working with them. I loved the fact that we had, barbecues every semester and things like that. So um, that was also a really great time for me. And this is something that I try to be very mindful of when I'm talking about my grad school experience, because it is such a time like it is such a difficult time sometimes, and it is at least a complex time. Even if it's not difficult, it's complicated. There are it's one of the times where sort of you're, because of the age that you're at and because of the pressures of grad school, it's very easy to sort of fall into a mental health slump, or just like feel like you're not cut out for it, or you want to like it's hard, and I've both felt it and seen it in my friends. So I talk to folks when I talk to folks who are like graduating from college and trying to figure out whether or not grad school is right for them. Like I like to have this like very frank conversation around, hey, it worked out pretty well for me, all things considered.
Mhm.
Um, and like sort of, I honestly think I lucked out a bit in terms of finding that group. Um, and then just, the kinds of things that excited me and stuff. It worked out, but it doesn't mean that I wasn't taxed. I was significantly taxed. And B, like I've seen a whole spectrum of experiences. So there is certainly good. And
Mhm.
I encourage, if you're excited by the research, excited by learning more physics, then certainly like it's something that I would never discourage anyone from. But also, think about why you want to go to grad school. What is it about it that is exciting you? And if it's something a bit more like I feel like I need this degree or something, then that might not be the best motivating factor. Um, so yeah, I also met my partner in grad school in Davis, and then I finished up my PhD in 2019, which was right before sort of when COVID started. So we went and hid in a cabin in the mountains for a bit. And that was when I was applying to jobs. So like for the first time in industry jobs. So, these last 5 years that I've been working for in industry, it has been fully remote because it started like when I started, it was remote. So that's been interesting. I think it could have been very different if, I'd sort of started by going to work on the San Francisco Muni and, getting to work and all of that. Um, but we moved out. After several months of being in the mountains, we drove cross country, rented an RV because I didn't want to go into public restrooms along the way. And we came out here to initially to Maryland. Now we're in Virginia and sort of eventually found our, home, and all of that and settled in. So the lots of moves, lots of like journeying and stuff. I love to work at startups. I really like the sort of small team interpersonal relationship aspect of it. I like to have everyone has impact like in the work that they do, of course. I like to be able to sort of feel the impact, sort of very directly instead of just, being a part of something big, which is also, I think is great. And, I have done that, and that's especially in the physics collaboration. That was, 5,000 people and we were all playing our little parts. But I think over the years, I really enjoy right now seeing the work that I do directly impact something and like make it flourish, or maybe we make a mistake and we have to like pivot. Like I like that sort of being on your toes kind of thing. So that I think I've discovered about myself over time as well. um yeah, I mean, I'll more than happy to share more aspects of sort of my journey, but
Thank you for that. I mean, I heard several different transitions and pivots along your journey. I also heard a bit of uncertainty and self doubt, but how you overcame that was really focus in grad school. It sounds like we all have so many different things that can interrupt our focus. And you took focus and said, this is what I'm going to do, and here's how I'm going to do it, and this is where I'm going to go and get it done. I also heard you say that you found your community and your tribe, whether that was, the group of grad students that you worked with to navigate that transition, or your partner, which helped you not only navigate your career transition, but also, what was going on with COVID in the space. And so it sounds like that gave you some level of comfort to get through the tough times and to get through to positivity. And so what an amazing journey you have experienced. Thank you for sharing that. Um, let's see. What would you say has been the most unexpected lesson in your career journey?
yeah, maybe the um importance of sort of soft skills and interpersonal relationships, which again, like it's not a surprise, obviously, looking back on it. And also, I don't think like I was ever someone who was like, oh, this is, a purely technical challenge or something, or, it's not that I was totally blind to it, but as a physicist, as a mathematician, solving problems, sort of like pen and paper, and you have your formulas and everything that you work with, um and then again, like staying in that technical part of things, working as an ML engineer and a data scientist. So many of the problems are algorithmic, and can be solved algorithmically, but the solutions almost don't matter, right? Unless you can uh rally people behind them, unless you can convince them, convince people that this is the solution, this is the right solution, and we've considered, other options. So that like building that I guess you could once again say like sort of building your tribe within a company or something like that, but building those relationships, that, not just with your teammates, but cross-functionally with other teams who are like, but with individuals who are sort of thinking about the same set of problems, same set of have the same goals, or not have like some other metric that they're working towards and stuff, and patching them in and bringing them into the conversation, and sharing with them why the technical solution works and why it's the right solution, how it works, right? Like, I think it's very easy to sort of say, hey, I'm an expert in this, and I know how this works, and this is the thing, and this is the output. But I've always found that, like, first of all, I really enjoy sharing with people what I did, like, the steps that I took. And it brings people in to the conversation, right? You are not only getting an answer from Shantana, like you would get from a computer or something, you're being invited into the process of, how we got there, the assumptions that we had to make, the things that we had to validate, and all of these little pieces. And then it becomes more like a communal decision, and like a communal solution. And I think that that is, something that you don't get taught in school as much. So it was a little bit more of, through work, I learned over the years that it's not just about solving the problem, but also like socializing it and sharing it with others.
So, for the introverts out there who are listening to this, I would imagine that it's a huge fear. Like, how do you approach the person? How do you find that connectivity and build that relationship over time? Not just when you need it, right, for their approval or alignment, but building it over time. So, what tools and methods did you use to build that organic relationship?
That is a great question, and it's something that, so I'm part of this women in data leadership group, and this was one of the topics that we have a monthly forum, where we discuss topics, and this was one of the recent ones, that we talked about, and it's just so important, um, to like, think about it and share strategies with each other, because everyone sort of approaches it differently, and it is in large part driven by like your personality, or whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, or the things that you get excited to talk about and stuff. So, different folks shared different ways that it's worked for them. Someone was sharing like they play the guitar, and they were like talking about, or had a t-shirt on that was a music reference or something, and at a company event, and then ended up talking to someone about that interest, and there was a shared interest for them, and it wasn't until later that they found out that this person was the CTO of the company or something. And then now when they talk, it's like, oh yeah, they talk about that guitar thing first, and then they can. So it can be sort of like that, like some aspect of your life or your personality that is just a genuine source of connection with someone, and then you can build on top of that, work stuff. For me, it has usually been a little bit more intentional. So I love networking. I love meeting new people, and it helps. Like, I am an extrovert, and sort of like it doesn't suck energy away from me to go to networking events and meetups and stuff. But it is still work. It's not like it's not work. So when I initially, sort of around that time when I was finishing up my PhD, I started going to a lot of tech meetups. And Oh, I was in Davis, so not exactly in San Francisco in the beginning, but still like enough proximity that I would like make that, hour and a half trek out, to the meetups, meet people, have take part in those discussions, build my network. And I kept doing that, over the years. It got harder with COVID, and it's harder now because, I live, sort of in horse country, wine country of Virginia, so it's a little bit removed from DC. But that sort of effort and, making getting there, being present there, and then sometimes it'll work out, sometimes it won't, right? Like, you go to a meetup, you don't leave every meetup with like ten new connections who may someday affect, like, be able to play a part in your professional journey. But that's also fine. Maybe you learned something from the talks. Maybe you made a genuine like a connection, like maybe you made a friend or something like that. So just putting myself out there, and being intentional about, yeah, I am going to put myself in these situations where I can talk to people who have who are maybe in the position that I want to be, or in the field that I want to be, and all of that. But if that is hard, for, if you're an introvert, another thing that I've found helpful and that I've done a lot is also like social networking, or like social media networking, right? Not everything has to start with like an in-person conversation, and perhaps, it might be easier to draft a message when you're not, like, it's async, right? So you're sort of like, you're thoughtful about it. You don't, you're not in your head about, oh, what if I say the wrong thing or something? And you reach out to people and you say, like, hi, this is the thing that, stood out to me about, your profile or something. And I think we have this shared interest. I would really, love to continue the conversation. And with the understanding that at some point you do have to sort of like make that connection, but maybe it's easier when it's not from there's like 200 people in this room and I have to find, someone to connect with. Maybe it's easier to, like, hey, let's do a one-on-one coffee, something like that. And that's worked really well for me as far as meeting people within the company too, within like my a given company that I've worked at. I have done a lot of let's say uh work adjacent uh events for the so there are a few things that I'm very proud of. One is I instituted or not institute I set up and ran a code and coffee at one of my previous companies.
Mhm.
Just an hour, not related to any specific work project or work thing that was happening, but just an hour where we would learn something new together. And I'm, proud to say that, like, it was open and accommodating, or like friendly enough, I guess, that, folks from different parts of the business would show up, like, customer success, customer support, or account management, and all of these folks would show up. And it's like, for some people, it's like, oh yeah, I've, it's coding is a skill that I've wanted to learn for a while, but I haven't been able to. And we went really basic, and we just, like, yeah, let's, for me, I code in, Python for the most part, and I've also coded in C++, but something like Java is completely new, completely out of my
Mhm.
wheelhouse. And so would pick something like that. And I wasn't always the person who was like, playing with something, or learning something new. Like, we had different people sort of filter through, and just like, hey, how do I, go down this? Because one of the things that you can do when you go to a website, because you can look at the code that went, you know, that represents the how the website is materialized. And okay, let's just dig into that. Let's understand what's happening. So that's one thing that found really brought people, like, into a room, and, like, with a shared interest. I have also done some journal clubs at work. So
Okay.
basically, we'll and that's been more like AI or ML or data specific. Like, let's learn about something that's being researched right now. And I've, as someone who's come from academia, and we definitely used to have journal club in our grad group, just like bringing that, like, there's something new, something exciting that someone is writing about, and some of it's going to go over our heads, and that's fine. It's going to go over all of our heads. But there might be some pieces that make sense to me, and I can explain that to you, or and vice versa and stuff, and just like a shared space for learning something new. Um, and then more directly too, I have also in like I guess office hours is the short of it.
Mhm.
I really like I've been intentional about putting time not only on my calendar, but like an open time on everyone's calendars. Like, this is an hour of time. It can be over lunch, like the lunch hour, or something like that, where we can talk about data, let's say. And as when I've led when I've been the tech lead for a data team and sort of figuring out what we're building, this hour allowed us to invite people in um, to ask for what they needed or what they wanted, or to like problem solve together, brainstorm together around what we could build so that they could that could help in their work. And more than anything, I think what it did for me was started people started to know who I was, and sort of the role that I played at the company, and the role that I, just like what kinds of things made me like click and excited and stuff. And I made a lot of friends that way. And some of them I definitely was like, leaned on later on. It's like, yeah, like, again, like those sort of like consensus driven decision making that you have to do at work definitely helped. And some of them, I reached out to later when I was like, for
Mhm.
example, job searching or something for a different role. So it's many things, but the core of it is trying to build those connections and creating the space for those connections to be made.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you brought up interpersonal relationships because it's an unwritten rule, right? In order to get things done, there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And that is exactly why you need those interpersonal relationships. They really help drive success. And as an introvert, I've had to build this learned behavior to practice, to identify who I want to network with and how I want to do it, to attend these meetings, although my schedule may be hectic, right? Because that's where the organic relationships get built. And having those relationships before you need them is so critical in your career journey. And so, thank you for sharing your story and giving us those tips on how we can continue to build our network and our interpersonal relationships.
Absolutely.
Um, so, shifting
Let me actually,
gears.
Nicole,
Oh,
let me add
yes.
one small thing here. Um, Relationships, especially in like professional circles, what I've found is um, you have to be willing to give before you take. And this is sort of in the same vein as like make building those relationships before you need to leverage them. But very specifically, offering something that you can do for the person that you're trying to build a relationship with really helps. A concrete example of this is I would go to these meetups early on for women in data science and machine learning, and I got value out of them. I love those events, and so I volunteered to be part of the organizing committee. And so I did that for a bit, and I helped organize events and stuff, and just like I didn't like I was getting value from the events themselves, but the thing that really um you know like I look back, and it was wonderful to have is like that set of like core folks who were running these events and organizing these events and thinking about what to do next and stuff. And definitely I'm in touch with them, and like I know that I can lean on them if I need a referral or something, or an introduction. And that specific thing I wouldn't have gotten had I not offered, like, let me help organize these events. So it's always a give and take. That is sort of just like how tribes work, how human
Yes.
society has always worked. And just putting yourself out there first, not just in terms of starting the conversation, but also in terms of like, let me give first, and then like that I can leverage this connection somehow, probably, as well. I think is a big part of it as well. I didn't
That's a
articulate that quite the way that I wanted to, but
But I completely understand it, right? It's people sometimes go into mentoring style relationships expecting to just get insights, right? And get advice and get all these things. But also, the best mentoring relationships I've ever been in is where there's a mutual benefit between the two parties. And so you are spot on with that comment. And so hopefully those listening understand that it's not just, a take. It's a give and take, and that's how you really begin to build those organic relationships. There's also this thing called reverse mentoring, right? Where the younger generation has, a lot of them are digital natives. They have access to details in AI. They have access to details and training and technology that maybe other generations don't have. And so taking that opportunity to teach and train others, whether they're senior to you or not, is very valuable to building those interpersonal relationships.
Absolutely. You might feel like you don't have anything to give, but you probably you do.
I'm going to start over. Let's switch gears. What's the most unconventional piece of career advice that you received that actually turned out to be true?
Great question. That I didn't have to necessarily make a hard decision or commitment early on in my career, that there were different paths to get to um, where I wanted, or where one might want to take their career. So let me elaborate on that. Again, when I was leaving grad school and, made the decision that I wanted to work in tech, I had a lot of folks who I, set up conversations with to learn about the work that they do, and sort of their journeys and stuff. And I was at the time I was considering, okay, do I, like, data scientist is sort of a well understood path from physics. Lots of folks sort of went that way and still go that way. But also, what else is there? Like, what other sort of role or position might I target as someone with my background, like with a technical background, but like very, very well aligned for solving problems that are less well defined. So sort of like coming in and like being able to put something together from relatively less relatively being able to come in and solve problems that are sort of like a little bit more obtruse or sort of amorphic. Um, and so one of the things I considered was product management, or product, strategy and stuff. So I was sitting with this one one contact, and I was like, I don't know, like, which one do I pick? How do I pick? And like, what do I have to do to make myself attractive as a candidate in that specific field? And basically he was like, well, you don't have to pick right now. um and so, I shared with him, like, I want to see more women in like technical leadership roles and stuff. And I want to be that representation as well. So I think I want to be a CTO or a CDO someday. And or like, but also I think product management is really cool, and like being able to problem solve and think about where to take the product. I think that's really cool. It's like, well, you can start as a product manager and build up to sort of like a product leader, or you can start as a data scientist or a software engineer and stuff, and like learn the trades of the tricks of the trade, and like what goes into building a good product, and then get to the same place. And it's many years ago, so I don't remember exactly what he said, but the essence of it was that you didn't have to like box yourself in, or just because you chose a path didn't mean that you were boxing yourself in, that you are able to make pivots, you are able to take from what you are committing to, what you're learning now, and take something from there to the next thing. And so none of these paths have to be end all be all. And I have experienced that um s- there are some sacrifices that you have to make when you are uh sort of hopping fields, because when you work in a specific field or work in a specific role, you build up expertise. I mean, there's no denying that. And then like I said, my interests are very wide, and I want to do so many different things, and I don't want to close doors. So I have found that I've had to argue that these skills that I've built are transferable to this other thing that I'm really interested in doing. But so it's not trivial, and it's something that you like, maybe you start somewhere a bit more junior, like if you're going from a very technical role to, let's say, a more like sort of um sort of leadership role, where it's more about like weighing different options and making decisions. You might have to start a little bit more junior than you would like to, and that's been hard for me, like, as I have I have this experience and I want to run with it. So I want to acknowledge that there is a little bit of setback that you might face when you're making those pivots, but also I do think that what this friend said to me then is true. Like, as long as you're able to sort of keep learning new skills, and even in a certain role, you're trying to learn what the other role is about, and what the job is there, and you can articulate well how the skills that are transferable, and all of these, like, just you have to be very, very mindful, very strategic about it. But I think it's true. It's a long-winded way of saying, I think it is true that um you can sort of take a more, sometimes, actually, let me take a step back, and because I hate the idea of there's a direct path and there's a roundabout path, right? So I think that's a common one that we see, and I just, the way that I like to think about it is it's all direct paths. It's just everyone's journeys are a little bit different, right? So you absolutely can make those pivots and get to where you want to get, and there are many paths to get there, and it's never like one straightforward thing. And it's just really all about advocacy, like advocating for yourself, advocating
Yeah.
for like why you're a good fit, and what you would bring to that role and stuff. And don't let others tell you that it's just like not for you or something.
Right. I've realized that it has a lot to do with positioning, right?
Yeah.
Um, there are sort of cookie cutter job descriptions out there. And if you're trying to apply for those cookie cutter job descriptions and you have a very diverse background, it's going to be difficult. It's a challenge. I've often seen in roles where I was already with the company, but I knew there was a bigger opportunity where I actually would create the job description and give it a title. I've also encouraged clients to do that, because then when you're out networking and someone says, "What do you do?" Well, I am a, data scientist who also knows physics, and I enjoy, whatever your hobby or passion is, helping others and guiding. I'm also very curious and I learn new technologies. So, kind of figuring out how you can position yourself to then make people understand who you are and what you do. Because there are so many, first of all, the workforce right now is so competitive. Although people are losing jobs, that's probably the reason why it's so competitive. And so that cookie cutter approach really won't work in this market, right? And so what's unique about you? And you are probably a unicorn in terms of having the skills and experiences that you have. And so how do you leverage that to build your best positioning and brand statement for yourself? And so that is something that I think would be great for you in your next steps. So a couple more questions before we wrap. How do you balance ambition with well-being and personal fulfillment?
Another great question. Um, So I have been very ambitious is such a weird word to use. I think that all the connotations. I'm very, very driven by certain places where I want to see myself. So an example of this, like I wanted to get my physics PhD, and I wanted to do it, in a shorter amount of time, and I set my mind to it. So I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head when you said like focus, right? Like,
Mhm.
really having something to work towards. Um, and I do probably more so than I should think about what's next, and how do I get to that next step, and how do I get to like, this thing that I want to get to. And that can make it um if you're too obsessed with that, if you're too focused on sort of certain career goals, it can get hard. It can become hard to sort of like prioritize other life things. So I think it's definitely a balance, and it's definitely something that for every individual, I think is going to look different, and you sort of have to be um, again mindful about it. Um, for me, there's a few things that help. Um, the like things that are I've put into my life that are sort of designed to, so, again, an example is my dog. She will come and she will ask for my attention, and I will give it to her because I can't say no to her basically. She also understands when I say, hey, I have a meeting now, and after an hour I'll be able to do something with you. She actually understands that, so that's great. But sort of those built-in things is like I actually take up to 2 hours, sometimes about an hour, sometimes two, in the middle of the day, to take her on a hike, because I can't do that at 6 p.m. And I also like, we wake up early enough, but I don't want to wake up like at 5 to go get that out of the day. It's my day. I have to claim control of it. So I and it helps that I have this like remote setup, and like work is flexible, and I work in tech where it's a little bit more outcomes driven as opposed to output driven, right? Like, it doesn't matter how many hours I work, as long as I'm doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. So all of those things help, and like we just go off in the middle of the day. We'll do a hike, and we come back, and I come back refreshed and ready to get back into work again, and all of that. So it's sort of built in that sense, and it keeps me relatively healthy and sane, rather than like working all the time. Um, and sort of the people that I have around me, like as we've established, I am an extrovert, and I love being around people. So we sort of we got a house on the bigger side so that we could have more people. So we have some friends that we made after the Ukraine war started, and we helped them come over here, and they stay with us. So that's really great, and just like having those things, like, to bring perspective into life. Like, when you're working, it's like the most important thing, and it's the most, like, you have to solve this problem, but then you have this person that has these other things going on. Reality check, right? Like, let's step out of our little area of focus, of intense focus, and like commiserate or empathize or just share a moment. Like, and like, there's so much more in life than the work, right? It really helps bring that perspective. For me, it's like, this doesn't matter, actually. Like, yes, being ambitious is great, having a goal is great, I want to be CTO someday, all of that is fine, but this, like, 50 lines of code that I'm going to output in the next few minutes is not more important than my friend who might be worried about their family because there's like bombs or something. And, like, it's an extreme example, but that is the kind of thing. It's like, it just doesn't matter sometimes, so you have to be able to step away.
Absolutely. Well, I could go on this conversation. You have been so insightful, but what a great way to end the discussion is around, really, it's self-care, It's making sure you plan for well-being and those things you need to have a little bit more balance in life. And so thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed this discussion and I look forward to staying connected.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Nicole.